What's going on, guys? Welcome to Auto Talks US, the podcast that inspires, entertains, and makes the world of cars accessible to everybody. I am so happy to be here. Today's episode is going to be all about hypercars. We're going to be taking a look at what they are, deep diving into brands like Koenigsegg and Bugatti, talking about pricing, investing, and just what in the world really is a hypercar. It's a pretty cool concept. So let's get started. So the first thing that is important to mention about the hypercar in general is that they're usually over $1 million. That's one of the first things that I look at if I'm talking about a hypercar. How much is the car? Is it $1 million? Is it $500,000? Is it $2 million? Is it $3 million? What is it as far as price range? That's number one. Number two is production number. Is this the flagship vehicle of a manufacturer, or is this beyond the flagship vehicle? Let me give you guys a perfect example. In 2014 or 2013, Lamborghini releases the Veneno. Like barely any production numbers. What was it, like 8, 9, 10, 11, less than 15 production numbers, I think. And right off the bat, boom, $1 million, 1.2, 1.3, possibly more. No one really knows because each spec was a little different. There was a coupe and then there was a roadster. So immediately you have Lamborghini coming out with a hypercar around the time that you found the 918 Spider, the LaFerrari, the Chiron? No, that would have been a little bit later, but also a hypercar. So those are that's kind of, we go down that road. So when the Veneno came out, you have the Aventador, which is Lamborghini's flagship. It's not the Huracan. The Huracan is a base offering that Lamborghini has. And then the Aventador is their flagship supercar. So that's kind of the one that is the backbone of their supercar manufacturing line. But after the supercar comes the hypercar. And those are typically in very low production numbers, like we just discussed, with a huge price tag. I set the baseline at $1 million. It is never not $1 million. The 918 Spider was over $1 million when all said and done. Let's see. Now, here's one that might be a little bit of a conversation. Ford GT. Now, I don't think the Ford GT, I'm talking the new one, the second gen, I don't think that's a hypercar. I think that's a supercar. Ford is a consumer car manufacturer. And for a consumer car manufacturer to go out of their way and make something extreme, they made a supercar. They did not make a hypercar. We can get into that argument later. Now, typically, you're going to find carbon fiber, titanium, a lot of hybrid electric advancements in power plants. McLaren is known for doing that really, really well. They've got these hybrid units stemming from the Formula One program, which is kind of like a internal combustion engine with a kinetic energy recovery system that has electric motors. And then the car, by the nature of its performance, is recharging these batteries so that it can then deploy it as horsepower. It's called kinetic energy recovery system. They developed it directly from the Formula One program. So that's pretty cool. What else? Hypercars typically are difficult to buy in the sense that there's not a lot of them. You usually have to basically spec out an allocation with the manufacturer. And with low production numbers, everybody wants one. It's not very difficult for a person in that class of buyer. Like, for example, myself as a automotive consultant, like when I have a client looking for an exotic car, we spend very little time talking about their budget. These guys all have money. Everybody in this category of buyer is pre-qualified as far as the check clearing the bank. That's not what these manufacturers look for. If they only have 150 of these to sell, there are going to be 150 millionaires or billionaires that are ready to buy it. Just the nature of the game. It's what's the manufacturer getting from you besides the money? If they're only building 150 of these cars and these cars are meant to represent their legacy, they need each one of these 150 people to be a direct representation of who the manufacturer is and what kind of values they stand for. Ferrari, big one in this discussion. They don't sell their cars to everybody. They sell their cars to who they want to sell their cars to, and the people they don't want to sell their cars to, they don't. You're not allowed to do certain things with them. For example, if you own the race cars, you can't keep them. Ferrari keeps them themselves, and then they invite you to events where you get to drive your car. You own the car, but you don't get to hold on to it. So that's kind of the realm of a lot of these things. So you're not just cutting checks. You have to agree to a certain standard. Okay, sorry about that. I had to take a sip of my hot tea. Oh yeah, right. So let's go ahead and just finish the podcast in this accent. Hypercars, yeah. We've got Koenigsegg, the Swedish hypercar. It's pretty nice. Old bloody fast. Founded by Christian von Koenigsegg in the mid-90s with the CC8S. It's pretty cool. It's got carbon fiber monocoque, free valve technology, totally camless engines, but you can hear the crankshaft. It's very loud. Pretty freaking cool, if you ask me. Okay, we're done. I had to get that out of my chest, off my chest, out of my system. Talking about hypercars, guys, by the way, I was excited to do this particular episode because hypercars, in my opinion, are, it's just really cool to see what a company can do. We're often teased by certain manufacturers and their concepts, but those concept cars, they're not real. They're mostly just displays of technology from a conceptual standpoint. But Koenigsegg, I used to be a massive trash talker, just full transparency. I don't even think I need to actually admit it because I mean, you can scroll back on my Instagram to, 2012, 2013 maybe. I was talking a lot of trash about those cars because there was a particular guy in the United States that got one delivered to Pebble Beach, and he said it was just a hunk of crap. And there was this big go back and forth with himself and the Mr. Koenigsegg himself as well. This is all public information that you can go and read about. And in the publishing, the customer basically called it a hunk of shit. That's the quote. That's why I'm using that word on the podcast. That was the direct quote. You can type in on Google Koenigsegg. Well, I'm not going to say it again because I don't want the algorithm to think that that's what I think of the cars. I don't, because I love them. They're some of the coolest cars in the world, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But yeah, it was really strange. I couldn't believe my eyes. I've been obsessed with them since the early 2000s with the CCS or the CC8. I mean, and it just incredible cars with completely bespoke technology. Everything is built in-house by the Swedish car company themselves. Everything from the engine to the nut and bolts. These are what's known as true hypercars, meaning they are not spawns of a supercar, nor are they a addition to a different manufacturer's lineup. So it's like if you're Ford and all of a sudden you make a hypercar, that's not what this is. Koenigsegg, much like Rimac, even though they're EVs, but I would put them in that class. It's a hypercar by engineering. Singer, as far as the single seat car, not Singer Porsches, Zinger maybe, and a couple others. I mean, look at this thing. I'm looking at a picture right now that I took 2 years ago. When I was working at Classic Recreations, which is a Mustang manufacturer that's licensed by Shelby. They have a lot of customers who have hypercars because those are just the types of cars that they build. They're super high performance, and these hypercar owners, they like to have crazy daily drivers too. For a hypercar owner, the daily driver is about $400,000. So there's a couple guys who own Koenigsegg's in that group of buyers, and we had the pleasure of spending quite a bunch of time with these guys, and we went out in the Koenigsegg Agera RS, not just any RS, my friend. We went out in the FE, which is one of two final editions. The Agera RS was finished basically in the late teens, I think 2018, 2019, with two final editions called Thor and Vader. One's got white gold with some diamond flake, or I'm sorry, one's got white gold with diamond flake. The other one's got like platinum in it. They're both stupid crazy exposed weave cars with just the absolute works. So these are these cars are nuts. So they've got pretty much a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio. There was a Koenigsegg called the 1-to-1 that came out before that, and then the Agera RS FE are just pretty much just even crazier versions of said car. They've got 5-liter V8 engines, twin turbo. Obviously, you can hear the turbos just. They make like 1,400 horsepower, I think, and they do well over 277 miles per hour. And I know that because when they set the record back in 2018 or 2019, they set the speed record by doing 3 back-to-back runs in a bone stock car. That car is called Ruthie. It's a red Agera RS. I think it's a RS. Yeah, and that car has been at a lot of different events. You can see it. It's this red Agera RS called Ruthie. You can check it out online. Maybe I'll put a link in the description or something. But absolutely crazy. 3 back-to-back runs with an average speed of 277. So a couple of those speeds were actually higher. They had to average it out to 277. So that's a street car that you could buy. You could drive it on the road, and it goes 277 miles per hour. If you want to know what a hypercar is, that's what a hypercar is. There's 2 of them in existence. It goes almost 300 miles per hour. You could drive it on the street. It's got gold in it. It's got diamond dust, diamond flake, whatever you want to call it. A full carbon tub that you sit in. There's basically, there is virtually no plastic on the car. Anything that could be carbon fiber is. That's the whole point. And so there's different weave lengths. Some are wider than others depending on the structural component of the car, because it's all about integrity of the strength of the carbon. Everything is functional beyond your wildest imagining. So you have this car basically that is meant for 300 miles per hour speed. What if you come to a very rapid let's call it rapid disassembly, like Elon Musk says it. Let's say the car comes to a rapid point of disassembly. You want to survive. And so that's what you get. When you look at these carbon fiber monocoques, it's the weave pattern matches from panel to panel. It's going to be really cool. Some are wider than others depending on the strength that it needs for that particular impact point. And you just feel so safe. You sit in what is literally a spaceship. Like, the Koenigsegg is literally like a spaceship, guys. Everything you look at almost doesn't make sense. They are wild. And it was a real privilege to be able to go however fast we went, much less just to be able to sit in the thing. So we went out for a really good run. And as a matter of fact, it didn't happen once or twice. I think it happened 3 times in 3 different sets of circumstances, ending up in this same Agera RS, which was Thor. I love that car. I've thankfully brought my camera on all these trips. I did automotive photography for 10 years. Never in my wildest dreams as a photographer could I have possibly imagined spending some time with one-on-one, basically with a Koenigsegg, much less several. I'm not gonna. Well, since we're talking about hypercars, let's just kind of go down a list of cars that have had since the fact had an opportunity to shoot, because um, I think it's important for photographers in the game to know that there is such a massive amount of access to hypercars and supercars out there that we can really take advantage of if you know the right people. And spending time in the community is probably the best way to learn where these people are and how to get in touch with them, and really just who to know, because networking is so important. But you also need to provide value too, right? If you're just shooting cars because you just want to have access to the cars, people can pick up on that energy. But if you're using your creative mind to offer some value, whether it's running a blog, writing entertainment pieces, writing opinion pieces, maybe doing interviews with people, or maybe you want a career in journalism and you're using photography as a start, be honest with people. Tell them that. This is some free game for a lot of you young photographers out there. If you're trying to really make a passion, or I'm sorry, make a career out of your passion, you want to let people know, and it really, 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 really helps, because these people, they don't want to they don't want to feel like they're just giving you their car to shoot just so you can look cool on Instagram. It just doesn't look. It's not a good look. Instead, tell people the truth. Be like, look, I've been obsessed with cars my whole life. I definitely can't afford one right now like this. Absolutely nothing like this. But like, it really makes me happy shooting them. And hopefully one day I can have a job, as a journalist, or maybe as a trackside photographer, running my own blog, having a website, being an influencer or something like that. I really just want to turn this photography thing into a passion, and cars like yours are going to be the way I'm going to do it. Everybody wants to see more of these hypercars. Unfortunately, they only made 6 of them. And by the way, know your stuff, okay? Don't approach a guy if you don't know anything about his car. It's the worst thing, and everybody hates it. Learn your stuff. Listen to this podcast. We're going to be talking about cars left and right. You're going to learn everything about them along the way. And that's kind of what it takes, because these guys, they spend a lot of money on these cars. It's their passion, and so they want to talk to somebody who also can resonate with that. So you definitely want to know your stuff when you're asking them to shoot their cars. But that's basically the bottom line: is be honest with these people. Tell them why you want to shoot their cars. They only made 6 of them, unfortunately, so chances are not every enthusiast is going to actually be able to see it in their own eyes. Let my platform be a way that other people can enjoy your car. I take great photos. If you give me your email, I'll send you these pictures as well. I think you're really going to like them. You don't even need to take time out of your day. Let me just get some pictures right here. And then, of course, if you want, I can do a full photo shoot for you. Something like that. I mean, tweak it, obviously. That was my pitch for 8 to 10 years, and it worked because it's sincere. But tweak it a little bit. Make it yours. Make it fun. And make it about them. It's their car. Now, back to the program. I always try to step in and be a coach when I can. Aside from the Koenigsegg, we saw a Chiron yesterday. A gentleman here in Dallas bought one, and it was just nuts. White with matte black rear. It kind of looked like the Per Blanc, which was a super sport Veyron owned by a guy in New York. I'm typing something in here. I want to see if there's a picture of. It was purchased out of Chicago, so you guys can probably find it online. But the Chiron is so cool. However, it's a little bit more tame than the Veyron. What I love about the Veyron is that it is simply there was never ever like. It is wild. It's so hard to service. It's so hard to maintain. It's ridiculously expensive. It's got like 8 or 9 drain plugs for the engine. All of that stuff, right? But the Chiron's much more manageable from what I heard. Even though it makes a lot more power, it's a lot more expensive. I heard that it's a little bit easier to live with, and they fixed, or maybe I shouldn't say fixed, maybe they got basically just made it more affordable to service. And so I really loved the fact that the Veyron was just so out of the world expensive for everyone to own, including the owners. I mean, maybe that's what a hypercar is. It's just hyper ridiculous. From the power, obviously the Veyron made 1,000 horsepower, or basically 1,000 horsepower at the time. That's what it was famous for. It came out in the early 2000s as this futuristic looking car based on the EB110, but not really. Ettore Bugatti, obviously the company itself is 100 years old, but the hypercar story didn't start until the early 2000s with the Veyron. When the Veyron came out, we lived in Virginia at the time, and I remember seeing it on the cover of something, and it said Boogity, and I go, "What the hell is Boogity?" And I kept saying Boogity, 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 and then a couple of years later, as I got older, I realized it was actually Bugatti, and it was Ettore Bugatti. It was his last name, and that's when I was already getting into cars at that point through Cars and Coffee and whatnot. So my story kind of started with the Bugatti, and not before then. Didn't have the posters of the F40 on my wall, unfortunately, guys. The first poster I had was a Murcielago manual supercar, and oh my goodness, the manual Murcielagos. We could do a whole episode on those, but it was really cool. The Veyron was just this thing that no one could afford to maintain, and it was just ridiculously fast. It came with 2 keys, one to go crazy fast and then one to go hyper fast. You would literally put a second key in, and it gave you access to like 240 miles per hour. It was crazy. And then the Super Sport came out, which was just the one that was the world setter, the world speed record setter. Black, orange, extremely well-known car. That was called the world record car. That's what I think of when I think of hypercar. Like, if I could have my druthers, if that's still a word, maybe I just hear that all the time, druthers. A person's preference. Yeah, perfect. Wow. If I could have my druthers, I would basically have an Agera RS for the regular car shows, right? Every Saturday, go to a Cars and Coffee, I would take the Agera RS down the street. If I wanted to do a concours, I would have a Veyron Super Sport World Record Edition, the carbon and orange one. And then we would also have a Chiron in the stable. We would have a Chiron that was probably black, just to complete the package. It seats 2. It would be probably the second most expensive car in the collection, next to the Agera RS. And then we would have, let's see. Oh, we'd have a LaFerrari as well for dinner at the chateau. I think anything that you do that requires you to maybe have a little bit of pasta, maybe have some olives here and there, a nice cocktail perhaps, talk into some business. You really want the Ferrari experience from beginning to end on that. Something feels right about that. But for a pure, unadulterated speed purpose, the Koenigsegg slaps every time. When we went in that Agera RS, guys, I experienced something that I've never experienced before, which was total trust in the driver. Normally, I can't stand being the one in the passenger seat. I love driving. I'm good at it. It's what I do. I don't like being the passenger. It gives me horrible anxiety because I know what I'm capable of driving a normal car, and I know that I'm going to get where I need to go. But when I'm not in control, oh my goodness, it's just wild. However, in that car, all things considered, given the speeds that we were able to achieve on these particular roads, I felt incredibly safe. And we went so fast that I would have normally been shitting my pants. But in this instance, it was good. Felt great. It was a lot of fun. The car gave me a pinch in my back, so I had to go see a chiropractor when I got back home to Texas. It was this weird thing where I think what happens is when you experience extreme acceleration, every muscle in your body tenses up really, really hard. And in this Koenigsegg, he punched it from like 60, 70 to a lot really fast. A car that can almost go 300. And so during this rapid state of acceleration, every muscle in my body was tensing, probably to the nines. I was gripping the door handle thing that it's got, and just sitting in my seat with the G forces basically push your Adam's apple into the headrest, into the back of the seat. So you're kind of glued there. You don't really have a choice during those few seconds of rapid acceleration. You don't have a choice but to just be pulled back. And that's when the muscles are tensing. It's kind of like in a fighter airplane, which I've also been in the back seat. Obviously, I didn't fly the thing, but I have been in the back seat of a aerobatic airplane, and those G's, like, you don't have a choice. When it's pulling you back like that, you're stuck there until the pilot or the driver decides it's over. And I did not expect it, so I didn't relax. I just kind of, he punched it, and that's what happened. And so when we finally slowed down, I'm like, oh, like something in my back kind of just popped a little bit. And I could hardly stand up. When we got to where we were going, I was trying to get out of the car. It was horribly painful. It was just extremely painful to get up because it was probably like a spasm of some kind. I don't know. But I went to the chiropractor. They popped some things. It felt a little bit better, but really just kind of went away on its own. So that was my first real experience with a hypercar, was that rapid acceleration, just the sheer G-force of being pulled back in your seat like that when you're not prepared. Nothing else can replicate that besides like a dragster. But when you're driving the car, your reaction is different because you are in control. So all of your muscles are in tune because that's your brain. It's pumping the blood. There's a fundamental difference in the anatomy of experiencing a car inside the car from two perspectives. If you're the driver, you have feedback from the car telling you, and vice versa, you telling it everything. And so your body is reacting differently. If you're the passenger, you have no reference point to any of that. So like that's just a difference. And of course training and predictable, sets of outcomes as far as the driver's concerned, because they do it obviously more. It's their car, so they also know what to expect, and that's their brain kind of tells their body how to behave because that they're in a familiar sets of circumstances. But not for me. That was crazy. Um, we also took the same car. We took a whole fleet of them actually uh, to an event one time, and this is the bizarre stuff. This is the real bizarre stuff. I've never been in a situation where I was around these types of hypercars in such a small place. But basically, we had in this convoy, myself in the Mustang that we built for this customer. It was a very special edition carbon fiber Mustang. So we took this Mustang and several other supercars and hypercars to Irwindale Speedway for Fuel Fest. Yep, it was called Fuel Fest. That's what it was. And the lineup of cars was the Speedtail from McLaren. It's the one with the center seat. It was a Speedtail. It was both Agera RS's, the final edition. So only two in the world. And both of them were in this convoy to Irwindale. And LaFerrari, a McLaren Sabre. So yeah, McLaren Sabre, Speedtail, Agera RSFE, another Agera RSFE. A 918 Spider. Let's see what else. This was basically the full hypercar lineup. The entire lineup was all hypercars for this thing, excluding the Mustang that I was driving. So stuff like that is just kind of what gets your blood pumping. You're like, oh my God, like how in the world is this possible? How is it possible that we are surrounded by just these epic cars, and not just one but three sometimes in some occasions. And I know I'm forgetting a couple cars. So I'm sorry, the Gunther Works was also there. So it's a 400R Gunther Works, which is the naturally aspirated Gunther Works. The LaFerrari was not just any LaFerrari; it was a LaFerrari Aperta, which is the topless LaFerrari. Absolutely nuts. 918 Spider, of course, owned by Faster. Just wild stuff, wild stuff. If I had to guess as an automotive consultant on these price points, I'd probably put about $25 million worth of cars. Yeah, about 25 million worth of cars on that particular drive. That's because that's serious stuff, you know. When you think about like, oh, you know, it's just a car and stuff like that. Well, normally it is, but with hypercars it's different because it's just a sheer number that you're dealing with, not just the production number, but also how long it takes to build, the perfection, the tooling involved, you know, to develop some of these technologies and some of the materials involved. Like I know Pagani, which is one of my absolute favorite brands in the world. They make the old model, the Zonda. That's what dreams are made of. The Zonda is my favorite car of all time, and I've been saying this for 2 decades now, almost. It's the Zonda is hard to explain because it's so elusive. Fortunately, again, got to spend a little bit of time with one and or a couple, and they are these cars that you don't understand. The edges are crazy. The power is crazy. They make unbelievable noises, but you never see them. You don't know where they are. You just know that they're out there somewhere being enjoyed, and you just want to see one up close in person. It's never enough. One time is never enough. Um, they were built and designed almost exclusively to achieve the person in charge's dreams. So what you have a lot of times with hypercars is they are founded by a person who oftentimes has a connection to supercars from their childhood or maybe from their youth. In Pagani's case, the guy worked at Lamborghini and he just wanted to make something better, so he left and did it. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the story behind this whole thing. You know, if we were talking about people we'd want to have on the show to tell their story, that's what we want to hear about. We want to hear about how in the world does Lamborghini fumble a person like that? You know, if you're sitting there and you're on, you know, Lamborghini's doorstep and you're going, hey, this is the way of the future, guys. Like, let's don't make me do this. You know, let's build one. If I'm wrong, we'll bring it up again. But if I'm not wrong and people buy it, it's kind of my thing, you know. And I had research, I had design, I had production. Um, I think it's interesting that a manufacturer like Lamborghini is so well into their establishment. Obviously, they've gone through the Miura. They were on the Countach at that point development. How something like that happens, where a guy like Horatio Pagani just ends up abruptly scooting and doing his own thing and creating the Zonda. I mean, are you joking? That's the coolest supercar at the time that there ever was, and he didn't stop there. It only continued from there. From the Zonda, you had the Wyra, which was twin turbo, and it had fins that move up and down with the wind and the air. And are you kidding me? Like, that's insane. So Koenigsegg's commitment was innovation, from the doors that open, kind of the hexa whatever doors, um, to the engine where you can kind of hear the crankshaft. It's really cool. Like when the engine's running, you can basically hear the crank. It sounds like an airplane engine. Super, super, super cool. Bugatti, obviously, we talked about that. The Chiron, just massive performance. And then cars like the P1, which came out around the same time as the 918 Spider and the LaFerrari. That was the Holy Trinity. That the P1 to me is my favorite out of the three, just because it shoots flames, and it's really cool that Chris Harris video. Remember him at Abu Dhabi, just drifting the crap out of it, and it was just like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh yeah, yeah, and he's drifting that black P1, and it's shooting blue flames out the back, and you never forget stuff like that. And you know that when you watch a video of an MP412C or a 650S or even a 720S, you're not going to get that same level of thrill. It has to be something that's worth, over $1 million in small production numbers. Now, the question is, are they worth it? Are they good investments? The financial side, that's the secondary market, really. That comes down to speculation and what people want. But cars like the McLaren F1, the F40, of course, yes, those are above hypercar. Those are God number cars. But regular hypercars like 918 Spiders, McLaren P1s, LaFerraris, they can be good investments, but you really have to factor in maintenance costs and depreciation, because the buyer pool is constantly changing on stuff like that. The Carrera GT went through an up and down cycle as far as, kind of what people were willing to spend based on the time of when that car was relevant. If we take stuff like that out of the equation, like the Bugatti Chiron, for example, it's still a good investment. People are still buying them fairly frequently. So that's a good investment. The Koenigsegg, we do see a lot of them out there. They start, $1.5 million, $2 million, and then very quickly used go into the, fours, fives. Especially if you talk the one of ones with gold and stuff, that you're very quickly approaching the $4 million price point. So that's hypercar money. If you break down, $4 million will get you a house that appreciates hand over fist on a car. You'd be lucky to break even on that Koenigsegg in 2 years. You're not buying it for that reason. So when we ask, are hypercars good investments? What to you what are you investing in? Are you investing in your car collection? Are you investing in an experience? Are you investing in the car for profit, for equity? What are you investing in specifically by buying the car? For me, I would be buying the car because I want that experience under my belt. When I die as a car enthusiast, as a hardcore gearhead, I want the experience of having owned a Koenigsegg and just being able to put my foot down, do all the things, look at it every day. For me, that's worth every penny, whether it's millions or hundreds of thousands. But I probably won't, 2 years later, 3 years later, probably not make 150%, 200% on it. That'd be a little bit absurd. I certainly don't think, and I hope I'm wrong for the sake of all the people that own them right now. You're living somebody's dream, and I hope you're rewarded for it. I genuinely do. I have clients who would love to own Koenigsegg's. Right now, it's just not feasible. The ones that are available, like I said, probably approaching $4 million. The Regera, the one that came out a little bit afterwards, is still cool. There's not too many of them out there. The Gamera, I don't even think is available yet. They're still selling allocations for it, but then they upgraded the engine. They changed it from a V6, I think, to a V8, or maybe from a V8 to a V, something like that. Basically, the Gamera at first, when it was launched, had a much smaller engine than it does now, and so they're still delayed, and I'm not sure when people are getting them. I heard 2029. So that's a long time, right? That's kind of another thing that you could consider with hypercars, is how long it takes to get it. You might order it in 2017. Let's bring up another cool example, because we're starting to see them everywhere now. Supercar Ron on Instagram has a badass one. The Aston Martin Valkyrie, right? The Aston Martin Valkyrie, everybody should be familiar with that thing. It's by far one of the craziest cars I've ever seen. It also requires headphones to wear, like the car we discussed in last week's episode, the XJR 15. You got to wear headphones to drive it. It's just an absolute monster on the road. And it's loosely based on their Formula One car as far as taking F1 technology and putting it on the street. It's a limited number production car, but when you see it at, $4 million, $4.5 million, whatever they cost, it's every bit of what you think the hypercar should be. So look at the Koenigsegg, look at the Valkyrie, look at all these cars. When you order them by going directly out there. You sit down and you look at it, and you experience the prototype possibly with the owner, and you go through all the options, you order it, and then it takes 5 years, maybe 6 years, 7 years, and then you finally get it. That's the experience of a hypercar owner. Let's be real. All right, the everything about the experience is hyper. And so if you think you're just going to go into the dealership and you're going to pick one out and you're going to hop in it and go home, you're out of your mind. Maybe if you get a pre-owned Pagani from the Pagani dealership and there's only one or two sitting on the floor, so you don't really get a choice of anything. But if you want the full experience, you go to the manufacturer, you sit down and you make it yours. And then you let the artist do their thing and you let them build it for you. There's probably a little bit of a wait. There's probably 2 to 3 year wait. And then they build your car for you. And then you're on your way. That's how it works. So the world of hypercars is fascinating. We could talk all day about them. I'm personally fascinated by them. If you're interested in buying a supercar or a hypercar, let us know. The show is sponsored by IEPconsultingsolutions.com. It is the automotive wing of Auto Talks US. We have a full suite of services, from consulting services to asset analysis, collection management, consignment. Do not make decisions that can really impact your financial future as it pertains to cars used as investment tools in your portfolio without speaking to us first. It's very, very important that you get some outside advice, some outside critical thinking on the decision that you're about to make. That's really important. And we can use technology and leverage really, really positive strategies that get us to where we need to go very affordably. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for another fantastic episode. It was awesome to be here with you guys talking about what's really basically the pinnacle of the street automobile. Supercars are one thing. We see them at our local Cars and Coffee on a weekly basis. But the hypercar, those are waters that are very, very seldom swam in. And those that do swim in those waters, they know what they have, So again, if you're a photographer and you want access to hypercars, give the owners a reason. Let them see something that inspires them in the request and just makes them appreciate it. Don't just be another guy asking to shoot their car, because if you own a Koenigsegg, most of your Instagram is people asking to take pictures of it. Full stop. Not even gonna lie. That's mostly what your DMs are. So stand out. Give these guys a reason. With that being said, guys, I am out. Thank you so much. It's been another fantastic episode of Auto Talks US. Like, share, and subscribe to the show on all your favorite platforms, and I will see you guys next week.